pumped?
Sure.
Yes.
Perfect.
Whatever you need to do, walk around, whatever.
Yes, I have a hard time standing in one place. So, I may come back over here for my notes. Okay. Well, I am so grateful to be here today. Revs, George and Ed, or I call him George, Rev G and Rev Ed, are having a wonderful time out on their cruise. If you've checked them out on Facebook, they are in definite celebration of their new vows to this marriage to God that they we all celebrated. I was here a week ago Friday for their ordination. It was so beautiful. And I am just so blessed that they asked me if I would come here today. As some of you, you may not know that I am a licensed spiritual practitioner, and I'm also in ministerial school. And it was Rev G and Rev Ed that kind of were the push to do that. Right after I got my license, I was at a convention and they were there, and they were in ministerial school at the time, and it seemed like, I teased them that they were stalking me, because there were two of them and one of me, and wherever I was, one of them was, and they were saying, you gotta start ministerial school. So about 2 years later, they finally got to me, and I did. And I've got about another year left, and I'll be blessed to join as a minister here at in CSL. Well, the theme for this month is compassion, and today's specific theme is compassion. And so I started looking at, what does compassion mean? What is compassion? And because I think I know it, I'm pretty sure I know it, and we've all heard the word compassion. We've all experienced compassion. We've either given compassion to a situation or a person, or we have received compassion from somebody. But when it came to what is compassion, it was hard for me to put into words. I don't know where am I standing in the wrong place?
I don't know. It may be feedback a little bit.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Maybe to the computer?
Yes.
Okay. So when I started looking it up, I like to, I go to the dictionary and to the internet, and every time I pulled up compassion, two other words came up with it. And that was sympathy and empathy. So I started looking at it, and what is empathy? What is sympathy? So I looked at a lot of different places, and what I found was a thread that ran through all the different definitions. So I'm going to start with sympathy. What is sympathy? Well, sympathy is when we are aware of, we recognize, and we understand that another person is suffering. That we're sympathetic. We feel for them. It's like when someone loses a parent or a child, we send a sympathy card. Right? We want them to know that we know that they are in pain, and that we understand that. Which is beautiful. It's very wonderful. And it's just, when you receive something like that, it gives you a nice warm feeling to know that there's somebody else who understands your pain. Empathy, on the other hand, is our ability to see that perspective, to be in the perspective of the other person and feel the emotions that they're feeling. Sometimes it's even a visceral, you get it like right in the gut of your belly when you feel it. And one of the examples that really gets to me is that in one of the definitions that I was looking at was, it's like when you stand and you watch someone slam their finger in a car door. See, everyone of you, that's empathy, because you feel it. You feel it. I was telling my friend Moni yesterday that I was visiting my granddaughter the other day, and she's 4.5 years old, and she was running to go see her father. She calls him Papa. And she's come tearing through the house, and she turned a corner and she slammed her knee into a chair. And I'm sitting there doubling over in pain. She's trying to be very stoic and not cry. And suddenly out of my mouth comes, "Oh, that hurt." And she just let the tears come then because she understood. Not only did I understand that she was in pain, but I was feeling her pain. And so she was able to let it all out, ran to her, why, Papa, ran to her father, and got all the loving and he actually, even, he doesn't know he's doing Reiki, but he did some Reiki on it because when you rub the sore, the hurt knee, and then she was fine. She was okay. And that's empathy. Ernest Holmes says that compassion is love indeed. 2 words, indeed. But it's also indeed. It's love. And so with compassion, we either come from a sympathetic or empathetic feeling, and then we also have the desire to alleviate the pain. We not only understand it, we not only feel it, but there's a desire to alleviate it so that that person's not in pain, that situation is no longer painful, and that's compassion. The Latin root of the word compassion means to suffer with. And so rather than in that suffering with, it's like we're feeling it and we want to relieve it because we understand it. So sympathy, empathy, and compassion are all tied together. Now we can be sympathetic and empathetic without compassion. We can just say, oh, isn't that, we can feel it, we can understand it, but we may not have that desire to alleviate it. As soon as we kick in that desire to alleviate it, we go into compassion and we go into love indeed. And I know when I'm being compassionate, when I have that sympathetic or empathetic reaction, but that I stay present to the suffering. I don't run away from it. I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I don't deny that it's there. I recognize that it is and I stay present. And I feel this readiness to alleviate it. There's a contemporary of Ernest Holmes that some of you may have heard of, I'm not sure. I know he comes up in ministerial school. And I can't remember if he comes up in practitioner training, but his name is Ralph Waldo Trine. He was also a New Thought person about the same time. And in his book, In Tune with the Infinite, he says, when we come fully to recognize the great fact that all evil and sin, with all of their consequent sufferings, come through ignorance, then whenever we see a manifestation of these in whatever form, if our hearts are right, we will have compassion and sympathy for the one in whom we see them. Compassion will then change itself into love, and love will manifest itself in kindly service. Such is the divine method. And so instead of aiding and trampling and keeping a weaker one down, we will hold him up until he can stand alone and become the master. And so what he's saying there is he's talking about that when we recognize that there is no evil, when we recognize that what we call evil, what we call sin, is coming from someone who is ignorant of truth, truth with that capital T, as we designated in New Thought, we can move ourselves into oneness, and we can move into wholeness, and we can see the wholeness that's not fully expressed in that other. We can see that there's wholeness there. Because we are in oneness, we feel that, we know that. There's no doubt in it. And this allows us to move from a state of judgment into compassion and taking action to help that other person to move out of ignorance. It's up to them to decide whether they move out of it or not, but we can be that channel. We can plant that seed. We can be the light for them, and they are free to choose whether they want to come out of the ignorance or not. And this includes ourselves. We can be compassionate with ourselves. We can understand that, oh, that thing I just did, or that thing that I'm feeling shameful or guilty, or, I don't want to show my face. Like that guy, the man in the message that you read. He went through that. He became compassionate with himself. He allowed himself to go through that, to see as Maya Angelou says, I did the best I could until I knew there was something better. And so he allowed himself to be better. He allowed himself to come out of ignorance. So one of the questions that comes to mind is, so how can I bring more compassion into my experience on this spiritual journey that I have, that I'm on? What can I do as an individual, especially when you look at, if you pay any attention to the news at all today, you pay attention to what's going on in the world, and you can see suffering. I'm not even going to bring any of it up because it's also evident. It's all right there. Pick a place, and you can see suffering. And I don't want to be of the suffering. I don't want to be part of that suffering. But what I do is I want to recognize it. I want to understand it. I want to feel it, and then I want to be in oneness, and I want to be in wholeness, so that I can then get that desire to alleviate the suffering however I can. And then I can start feeling pretty small, because how can I do anything? I'm one person. I can't be everywhere in the world at one time. Name the place. I can't be at the southern border. I can't be in Syria. I can't be in my own neighborhood all the time. I can't relieve everyone's suffering at one time. But there's one thing that I do know, is that wherever consciousness is raised in the one mind, it is raised everywhere. And it's there for those who want to grab it, who want to be part of it. That's why spiritual mind treatment works. Because I'm not raising anybody's consciousness but my own when I do that. Whether I'm praying for myself or I'm praying for somebody else. Not for, about. So here's something to think about. How would your life be different if you lived as if there was nothing against you? There was no one against you. There was no opposite force. There were no obstacles. How would your life be different? Yeah, what decisions would you make differently? If you knew there was no way to fail, if you knew that there was nothing stopping you, nothing was going to come out and say no. There was no evil in the world, that there was only oneness. In Science of Mind, on page 470, Ernest Holmes says, "There is nothing in the universe that wishes evil to anyone. Indeed, it is only as we experience good that God is expressed through us. The more completely we realize good, happiness, and success, the more perfectly do we express God, and the more of God do we become. That is, the more does God become personified through us." And I would add to it, as us. So the more that we can see good, the more that we can see wholeness, the more that we can be oneness, the more there will be, the more that there is. So as we come to realize that there is nothing against us, we can let go of the fears that have kept us contracted. One of the visualizations that I have of light, of each and every one of us, is that we come into this plane as this beautiful crystal that just emanates out God's life. Take a look at a brand new baby. They are just beams of light that happen to have some physical form to them. And what happens over the years, over time, is that things get put on that crystal that diminish the amount of light that comes from it. And it's just the way it is. Some of us get more crud on us than others, but we all get it. It doesn't matter. I mean, you could be raised in a New Thought home, and there's still stuff, because if it's not your parents, then it's your teachers, and if it's not your teachers, then it's society itself. But there's just things. There's ads on TV that tell us we're not good enough, we're not enough, that we don't know. This is, there's just all this stuff around us. And so when we can let go of all of that that contracts us, what I like to think of is as I'm on this spiritual journey, as I start letting go of those fears, as I begin to live in oneness and understand my oneness, all of that starts falling off. It chips away. It falls off in my light because I'm not letting anything in. I'm letting it out. And one of the sayings when I first came into Science Mind that really resonated with me, we don't let God in, we let God out. And I was like, whoa, that's a concept. Because all your life you've been told, I was raised Catholic, so, you're a sinner from the moment you're born. You've got to work at letting God into you from that moment on. So I want to talk about a concept that we are our own worst enemy. Is that called enemy mind? So if I see anyone as an enemy, or like this story, someone who irritates me, she may not have consciously thought of it as an enemy, but it's something against me. This man is doing stuff that's really irritating me. And what happens is when I can see that in something that somebody else, then there's a mirror. It's a reflection of some belief that I have that makes me separate. And it's a belief that there's something or someone against me. There's someone out there to do it to me, whatever it is. And that's not true. Whether you read Ernest Holmes or Trine or pick somebody in the New Thought, you can even go into the Bible itself, and you'll especially the New Testament, read any of the teachings of that great teacher Jesus, and you hear there is no enemy. So how can I deal with this enemy? So anytime I feel that somebody's irritating me, anytime that whether it's myself or somebody else, a situation, it doesn't matter. One of the first things that I can do is go to love. I can go to love and I can look at it as a mirror. So if I recognize that person, that situation, as this woman found in her story, it was touching something in her that was allowing her to be irritated. And as soon as she recognized that, and let go of that, and there was no longer a reaction. It wasn't bothering her anymore. That person no longer was her enemy. It was no longer something against her. And he didn't know how to react. He didn't know what to do. And the story talks about him going, first he was quiet, and then he probably, my experience with people when I've done that, when I've gone inside to see what is it that I'm being irritated, where is it touching me, is at first it causes them to get a lot more vocal or more, it raises them up because, my gosh, I'm going to figure out a way to push that button, And as long as I can stay centered in that, as long as I recognize that that's just a mirror, and I've cleared that mirror out, then they start going, they start calming down, they either go away or they change, like the man in that story did. Because they can't dance with you anymore. They don't know the steps anymore. So that's one of the things that I can do. Because every time that I look at somebody who's irritating me or a situation that's irritating me, something where I get that, I'm watching somebody slam their finger in a car door kind of reaction, it's touching something in me. And if I can figure out what that is, if I can shore that up, if I can clear that mirror out, then what I do is I come more into my own wholeness, my own oneness. And if I'm in oneness, all I see is oneness and oneness. when you're in practitioner training, one of the things I learned was if I'm a practitioner, a licensed practitioner, and I get called to come to a hospital to do prayer for somebody, and I walk into that room and I see a sick person, I need to walk right out of that room. I need to walk out and I need to center myself or call my practitioner or my minister, or get myself centered. So I walk in there and I see wholeness. Because if I don't see wholeness, I'm not whole. And if I don't see wholeness and I'm not whole, there's no prayer that I can do that's going to help that person. I have to come from knowing. And so that's something that we can each and every one do, because every person that I see in wholeness, every person that I treat from love and treat as oneness and treat as that is me, that person causes a ripple effect through the entire world, and it only takes 6 other people where you've touched everyone in the world. So every time I come from love, every time I go to wholeness and I go to oneness, I take that moment, that conscious breath, and know that I'm breathing in the breath of God, and that is refreshing. And it not only is it bringing oxygen into my physical body, it is bringing spiritual fire into my spiritual body, my spirit self, my emotional self. And when I breathe out and speak from love, when I speak from that state of oneness and wholeness, and recognizing that whoever it is, they are just as whole as I am, it's just not it's not fully expressing itself. People who hurt people are hurt people. If I go to the absolute, love is all there is. If I come down into the relative, if you look at our teaching symbol and I'm down here in the relative, there is love and its opposite, whatever that opposite may be. And if I'm only in the relative, I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between love and its opposite. But if I can just move up a little bit and start seeing things from love, as love, from the absolute that love is, then I don't have to keep going back and forth. I can stop that rat race. I can stop digging that rut. So come from love. Another thing that we can do is to make it mean good. Whatever's happening, make it mean good. Bless it. When I bless a person or a situation, I acknowledge that it is a source for good in my own life. No matter what the situation is. I was telling somebody before service that I found Science Mind by my whole life being uprooted and being moved to California. I tried not to go to California 4 times. 4 times to move to California, and I said no. I need my spiritual advisor at the time, who was not Science Mind, but she was a Native American, and said, don't move to California, you have free will. However, Spirit will continue to hit you with a spiritual 2x4 until you do. There's something for you to learn out there. And so I went, and that's where I came into Science Mind. I found it there. I found this teaching. I found what I came home. I love that. I love that. And one of the things that was so difficult for me, I came from a tiny little town in upstate New York. In the area, it's a big town, but compared to any place else in the world, it's big. Like Boston, it's like is a little tiny dot on the map. In rush hour, my kids used to ask me, Mom, why do you call it rush hour? It only lasts for 15 or 20 minutes. When all the factories in the area would let out, right? Until we moved out to California. And I moved out there about the time back east we were hearing about road rage in California, and people actually like shooting people and stuff like that. So I got to learn road rage. And this was before I found Science of Mind, actually. I had a woman tell me, you have to stop yelling at these people. You need to bless them. And it doesn't matter how you say that. Because a blessing is a blessing is a blessing. So instead of saying mean things in a nasty voice, say, bless you in a nasty voice. And I'm like, that seems odd. But you know what happened? Not one of those people that I blessed changed, as far as I know, but you know who did? Me. I became more patient. I became blessed. I became knowing that I was going to get to wherever I needed to be on time, no matter what the traffic looked like. I mean, it took me one day, it took me 4 hours and 10 minutes to go 45 miles. Unfortunately, I'd already learned this lesson. I just stayed calm. I just blessed everybody who was trying to, and, 6 lanes of bumper-to-bumper traffic, all going in one direction, kind of stuff. So when I do this, I can change the meaning of what is happening. On our drive, a couple of my friends came with me, and on our drive up here this morning, we were talking about in quantum physics. It's the observer. Nothing happens if there's not an observer. It's one of those, does a tree make a sound if nobody's there to hear it? It's the sound of one hand clapping. So, as the observer, I have the opportunity to say what this means. I have the opportunity to say, is this evil? Is this sin? Or is this something, is this God unfolding? Is this something that's good for me? And when I do that, what I can say is, well, isn't that interesting? What do I have to learn from this? And it changes the meaning every time. I've never had it not change the meaning. I was told that by the first practitioner that I had ever gone to, and still see her. She's still I still consider her my practitioner. She's my practitioner. and she told me many, many years ago, like 15 years ago, just say, well, isn't that interesting? When a negative thought comes up, when I'm irritated by something, when fear shows up, isn't that interesting? But the truth I know is, or, well, isn't that interesting? What do I need to learn from this? And when you say either of those, when you say, but the truth I know is, I take whatever that is and I shift it into the truth. I shift it into love. I shift it into wholeness. I shift it into oneness. And it brings me back into that understanding that there's nothing against me. There's nothing out there that's trying to stop me. It's only my own thinking. So enemy mind. And I can shift that. I can shift it. So another thing that I can do is to do the right thing. I can let go of needing to be right. That's been a big one for me. And I can focus my attention on what can I do in this moment to demonstrate my wholeness. And when I go there, it's not about winning. It's not about making the other person be defeated. It's not about looking good. It's not about what others think about me. It's about me standing in my wholeness and my truth. It's Wayne Dyer. Lots of people have said this, but I got it from Wayne Dyer. Do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? That doesn't mean to let anybody run over me or anything like that. It just means that I need to be looking at how can I be in my wholeness in this situation. And so I heard this, something that has come into my awareness and experience lately has been the word think. Think before I speak. And so when I think, I ask myself, is it true? I have to write this down because I don't always remember. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is what I'm going to say inspiring, or am I saying it to deflate the other person? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So if I just think before I speak, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And sometimes I'll even add, am I the person that needs to say this to this person? Because if I know, if I say it, it's not, there's going to, the immediate thing is going to put the wall right there. Then maybe it's me talking to somebody else and saying, not because I'm trying to run away from it, because that's the another filter I have to be, okay, am I just too chicken? But I may not be the appropriate, but the main thing is it kind, is it inspiring? And then another thing that you can do, doing all of this sets me up to be able to pray for myself and to pray for the other person or the situation. Pray for freedom. Pray for one that, not pray for freedom. Pray that freedom already is there. Pray that oneness is there. Pray that wholeness is there, because you know that that's what is true. When you pray for your enemy, for that which irritates you, when you pray for this and knowing that wholeness and calling on that wholeness and that oneness to more fully and freely express itself, I shift myself. I start to embrace my own wholeness. Because for me to do that, for me to pray about someone else's wholeness, I have to recognize my own. I have to recognize my oneness. I have to recognize that I am love incarnate. There was a time in my life where I would not have been able to say I am love incarnate. It wouldn't have come out of my mouth. And then I started hesitating, but I could say it. And now I can just say it. Because I've been doing you do the prayer, you do the work. Every time I recognize wholeness in someone else, I am acknowledging my own. And one of the things that, when I think of that, about that is, in ministerial school, I was raised to this heightened excitement about this thing that I always avoided called the Bible. Because we study it from the metaphysical standpoint. And it's like, wow. Our minister at Connecticut Center for Spiritual Learning, Reverend Patrick says, sometimes he'll say, Jesus was one of the greatest metaphysicians that ever was, and he never studied science of mind. Who knew? But here he is on the cross, knowing that his physical body is going to die, and he is blessing his enemy. He's blessing those that put him there. He's asking for forgiveness for them because they don't know what they do. He acknowledged their ignorance. They had no idea they were living in what we today would call they were asleep. And so he forgave them. And it's like, wow, if that's the case, then it leads me to that I can forgive also. And prayer is, spiritual mind treatment is one of the biggest tools that I have ever received. It is something that I can go into at every time. It is something that can take me into compassion. Because I cannot do a spiritual mind treatment if I am not in love, if I'm not in wholeness, and I'm not in oneness. And the 5 steps bring me to that place. Acknowledging that God is all there is. acknowledging that I am an individualized expression of that. And then declaring what I know to be true. Being grateful to know that truth. And then just letting it go and let the law do its work. Just saying those few things. I mean, I'm like, okay. And last week at Connecticut Center for Spiritual Living, we were blessed to have a gentleman who's called the Peace Troubadour, James Twyman, came to our center and talked. And there was something that he said that just so moved me. This is a man who goes all over the world. I don't know if you're familiar with James Twyman. But I found out about him when I don't know how it came through other than it was a divine invitation to become one of his peace warriors. So that when he decides to go, when he takes a group into a war zone and praying for peace, he also, he not only takes the few people that he takes with him, but he also has a group of people all over the world who at a moment's notice will go into prayer for peace when he's in that situation. And so I became one of those people. And so you'll get an email saying, okay, in 2 hours we're going to be going into, we can't tell you where, but we're going to be going into this war zone. And so at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in your time zone, please go into prayer. So it doesn't matter what the time zone is, you have people all over the planet praying all at one time. And he went into Syria the first time that I did this. Nobody knew he was coming, and they sat up on a hill overlooking a town that had been controlled by ISIS, and there was gunfire and artillery, all the stuff going on. And as they sat down to pray, and everyone around the world began to pray, that peace was there, recognizing, stating the truth, that there really was peace there. Everything stopped. The gunfire, the artillery shells, the fighting on the streets, all stopped. And they stayed there, I think they stayed there for close to an hour. And they left, and it was hours before it all started up again. So there is peace in the middle of all of that. We just need to recognize it. But what he did was, he showed me how a shift in the way I speak shifts me. Words are important. So many of us are familiar with the St. Francis prayer of peace. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Well, one thing we found out from him, he's a former Franciscan monk, and St. Francis has been someone he has studied in depth. Well, St. Francis didn't write the prayer. However, it embodies everything that St. Francis was about. And so, if you know this prayer, it's, Lord, make me a channel or an instrument of your peace. That where there is hatred, may I bring love. That where there is wrong, may I bring the spirit of forgiveness. That where there is discord, may I bring harmony. Where there is error, may I bring truth. Where there is doubt, may I bring faith. Where there is despair, may I bring hope. Where there are shadows, may I bring light. Where there is sadness, may I bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort, seek rather to comfort than to be comforted. To understand rather than to be understood. To love than to be loved. For it is in forgiving, self-forgiving that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, and it is by dying that one awakes to eternal life. When I first heard that, I loved that prayer. I used to say it all the time. But when I shift that prayer, and I say, Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, I bring love. I am love. Feel that difference. So say this for me. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
Now say, Lord, I am an instrument of your peace.
Lord, I am an instrument of your peace.
And now say, Lord, I am an instrument of peace.
Lord, I am an instrument of peace.
It's not yours, it's mine, because we all are peace. Each and every one of us. We are, and words are important. So that's another thing we can do. We can pay attention to what words are we saying. How are we talking to ourselves? What's the self-talk that we have? Just a tiny shift in make me an instrument to I am an instrument. A tiny shift from of your peace to I am an instrument of peace. Just those tiny shifts everything about you, and it shifts you biologically too. It changes neural networks. It shifts the chemistry of your body. So one thing, what I would like to leave you with today is that there is nothing against you. There is absolutely nothing. There is no one against you. So I challenge you to make your path to prove this as truth. I challenge you to know your wholeness. Because when you understand, when you live your life as if nothing is against you, you recognize your wholeness. And the more you recognize your wholeness, the more your wholeness expresses itself. And the more you see wholeness in everyone and everything, and the more you can drop right into spiritual mind treatment when you see that it's not expressing to its fullest for yourself or for anybody else. I leave that with you today. Thank you. Now there's a tradition at our center, Connecticut's Center for Spiritual Living, that our dear Reverend Patrick started many, many decades ago, which I enjoy, and that is to open it up for questions. Because one thing I know is if you have a question or a comment in your mind, that's what you'll leave here with. And so, if there's something you would like clarification on, or a comment you want to make, or whatever, we can turn the mic over to you, and you're more than welcome to ask. Cynthia, of course, she always does. She's being very kind by not putting her hand.
Oh, wait.
Do you want the?
Thank you, Jackie. So, you were talking about if I don't see wholeness in someone, if they're not well or they're sick in some way, then I'm not seeing it in myself. Okay. And then you said it would be important to bring fire into my being. Can you explain a little more about that? And what you meant about that?
Sure. So first, I was talking about being a licensed spiritual practitioner. If I walk in and I see a sick person, then I should leave and recenter myself, because I need to walk in there and see wholeness. Because if I don't see wholeness in you to the point where I'm acknowledging that that's a sick person, then there's something in me that is going into separation from God. Because no matter what's going on, I should be able to walk in and see that there's wholeness in me.
Tell me about the fire.
So the fire I was talking about is when I take a breath, I'm breathing in. We breathe in oxygen, and that oxygen goes to our body, and it revitalizes every cell in our body. And if we don't have oxygen, this physical body doesn't exist anymore. It dies. Well, when I'm breathing in, I'm also breathing in the breath of God. And so when I take a conscious breath in, I know that oxygen is coming into my lungs. I'm also breathing in that spiritual fire of God. And that's what I was talking about. So a visualization I have, especially if I walk in and I am not seeing wholeness in somebody, that I can take a nice deep conscious breath. And I know that as the oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide in my lungs, and that oxygen goes through my bloodstream to every cell of my body, that it is bringing with it the breath of God.
I'd just like to comment about seeing the wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
What I think may be confusing is we know that despite the appearance, the inner essence of everybody is perfect, whole, and complete.
Exactly.
And that's what we're embodying when we go in to do treatment for somebody
Correct.
who may be by appearance. Because we can't deny that there is an appearance.
Correct. Don't
But
deny
we-
the appearance.
But
Right.
we
Right.
acknowledge that beyond the appearance, the truth is, if we see them as perfect, whole, and complete, we have the power to create the perfect, whole, and complete within
Yes.
that presence.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
no, I was
Oh,
curious
it was
about
just-
the word fire.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that is the case. That what I don't, and when I go back to that definition of compassion, I am staying in that. I'm staying present to it, but I am not overwhelmed by it. I am not denying it, but I will still see the wholeness there. You know, it's like a tree. There's, some people will say, "Oh, that's a really ugly tree," but I can walk out there and I will see perfection. One of the stories that I really love is, if you remember the guy who played Superman, Christopher Reeves. He fell off a horse, and he'd been riding horses. I mean, it wasn't like his first time on a horse, and he became a paraplegic. And if you listen to his story or read about his story, is he immediately went into, "I'm broken. I'll never work again. My life is, it's one of those 'why did God spare me' kind of stories." But as soon as he recognized his wholeness in what appeared to be brokenness, he went into compassion for himself and for all of those who have suffered spinal cord injuries. And he became an advocate for research into it. He recognized his wholeness, even though in our physical world he looked broken. And from what he did, there's been incredible research that has been done to try to heal, to try to bring back into physical wholeness people who have had spinal cord injuries. I look at Stephen Hawking, and his body for decades appeared broken and failing, to the point where he could barely even open his eyes. And look at the incredible technology that was developed because he recognized his wholeness. That one of the things I love about Science of Mind is everything is God. Everything is God. So when I do prayer for myself or somebody else, I not only include them. If like when I fell down a set of stairs and broke my femur. And when I did this, and I really thought I could do a spiritual mind treatment and make that femur come back whole. I even sent my son I said, "You go to the shower, don't you dare call 911 yet. By the time you get out of that shower, I'll be up and walking." Okay, God said, "Yeah, But what did happen was, once I recognized my wholeness in that brokenness, I included the EMTs that came, I included all the equipment that was put on me, I included any medications they were giving me, and I got like a top surgeon who happened to be on call at the hospital that day. And what they told me was going to be a week of laying there in pain, waiting for the surgery. I had the surgery 2 days later after the break. And it was all because I could see wholeness in my brokenness. what appeared to be broken. I didn't deny. Initially, I was denying it. I was trying to say it wasn't there. I didn't want my leg to be broken. I had a wedding to do that Friday, and this was Monday. I can't break this leg, right? But as soon as I shifted to seeing my wholeness in that brokenness, everything fell into place. Everything fell into place. They were able to move me with almost no pain before they gave me any painkillers or anything to get me up on the gurney to get me into the ambulance to take me to the hospital. Now I do have to say, my son has told me I need to teach the dog how to dial 911 because he's not going to call it ever again. So, we're working on it. The dog's not too keen on it yet. But anyway, so that's what happened. Yeah. Is there any other comments or questions or anything? Well, I thank you all again very, very much. Oh, you had another one, Sophia? Sophia always does.
Yeah, you use the term enemy mind.
Mine. M-I-N-E.
Enemy mind. Well, that's even more intriguing. I don't know what that means.
I am my own worst enemy.
Enemy
My
mind,
thinking.
M-I-N-E.
M-I-N-E.
Oh. Okay, I like that.
Well, mind also, because our mind can be our biggest enemy.
Yeah,
Mind.
enemy mind.
It is our biggest enemy.
Okay, thank you.
I was trying to make sure it didn't sound like a D at the end.
It didn't, but I was confused on where it went.
Yeah.
Like it was D.
Why isn't she saying mind?
It's
No.
okay.
Anyway.
Enemy mind.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate it. And
Thank you.
bless everybody.
Now we move to spiritual mind treatment.
Oh, that's
For
right.
the
That's right.
community and for the Facebook friend, and then after that, Facebook gets shut off.
Okay. All right. So, what I would like to ask each and every one of you and our Facebook friends who are watching is to just close your eyes, because when you close your eyes, you close off all the visual distractions. And just go within with me for a moment and bring into your consciousness this knowing that there is nothing against us. There's nothing against you. And just breathe in that breath of God. Let it permeate every part of you. For what I know is that no matter where we are, God is everywhere. There is no spot where God is not. God is the power and the presence that is the creator of all life, because it is the one and only life that is. And in that desire to express the life that it is, all things in the universe are created. Everything is an expression of this desire to express life. I also know that God, this thing we call God, this power, this presence, is love itself. It is love that is beyond human comprehension. It is all loving. It is all knowing. It is unconditional. And so in that love that God is, each and every one of us is created. I know that I am a whole, perfect, complete, unique expression of the One. I know that that is true of everyone in this room. I know that that is true of every person on Facebook. That is true of everyone in this entire planet. That we are each an individualized expression of the One. The wave upon the ocean. Unique, yet complete part of the whole. And just as I know that the microcosm has everything within it of the macrocosm, that the pixel of the hologram can make the entire picture of the hologram, I know that that is true of each and every one of us. That within us is exactly what we need. Within us is everything we need to know. And so I claim for each person who hears this, each person who is right here, right now, wherever that may be, I claim your home. I claim wholeness. I claim oneness. I claim the love that each of us is. And what I know it is that it is this wholeness, it is this oneness, it is this love that clears the path of what appears to be obstacles. And that anything that appears to be against me, anything that appears to be in the way or clouding, I know it's just a vapor. And so as I take that breath in, as I breathe in that breath of God, and breathe that fire of spirit into my being, that fire melts away anything that appears to be against my wholeness, my oneness, my love that I am. I claim this for every one of us. Expressing this in word brings me into a state of deep, deep gratitude. Grateful to know this truth. Grateful to speak it in the word. For I know that once I speak this word, it is already done. For I know that everything is created twice. Once in the mind of God, and once again in the physical. So knowing this, in that gratitude, I let this word go into that immutable law, that one that can only respond yes, the one that does not allow my words to go void. I let this go. I let God do its work and allow it to unfold in God's perfection. And I invite you to join me in claiming this for yourself by saying, and so it is.
And so it is.